Good evening, friends. Thank you to everyone to join the eClerx Q2 FY22 earnings conference call. Before we proceed on this call, let me remind you that the discussion may contain forward-looking statements and that may involve known and unknown risks, uncertainties, and other factors. It must be viewed in conjunction with the business risks that could cause future result performance achievement to differ significantly from what is expressed or implied by such forward-looking statements. To give you an update on the quarter and to answer your questions, we'll have with us the top management of eClerx. PD Mundra, co-founder and executive director, will join shortly. Anjan Malik, co-founder and director, and Rohitash Gupta, the chief financial officer. We would start the call with a brief overview of the quarter by Rohitash, and then we'll open it for the Q&A, which will be taken by PD, Anjan, and Rohitash. I think PD is joined in. Sorry about that, PD. I guess you had showed the link. So without much ado, Rohitash, over to you.
Thank you, Diwakar. Very good evening and welcome to eClerx Q2 FY22 earnings call for the quarter and half year ended on 30th September 2021. We also wish you and your family a very happy Diwali and festive season ahead. This was a notable quarter for us as we reached a new high in quarterly revenue along with highest ever INR PAT margin and net operating cash flows, while achieving the lowest ever client concentration on top 10 clients. Our operating revenue in the quarter was USD 69.35 million, which is sequentially up by 7.6% in constant currency terms. This quarter's total revenue was INR 5,250 million, which is up 6.2% sequentially and 32% on YOY basis. Our net profit this quarter was INR 1,007 million. We have reduced our client concentration risk while growing majority of our top 10 clients on both QOQ as well as YOY basis. Our client count for 3 million plus revenue clients now stands at 16 compared to 9 3 years ago. We had cash balance of INR 8,052 million at the Q2 end, which has increased since last quarter. But it will reduce by about INR 3,700 million once we complete the ongoing buyback. The capex and associated depreciation is likely to moderately increase through H2 as we refurbish our facilities for return to office and buy IT assets for increasing employee base. Our DSO have improved further this quarter as clients' approval has become quicker due to new normal of remote working at several of our clients and less frequent changes by clients in their accounts payable process recently. On people side, we continue to work from home for 85% plus of our staff and have been able to get 92% plus of our India staff vaccinated with at least one dose. We have published our standalone sustainability report for FY21 in this quarter and will look forward to incorporate any of your suggestions for the next version. We are happy to state that we have made rapid progress on diversity in this H1, with nearly half of new employees in India being women. Overall demand environment and Personif's revenue trajectory have remained strong in last few quarters, and we continue to see fewer instances of unexpected large roll-offs. We have now aligned our accounting policy to consolidate ESOP trust with our standalone parent entity, and we hope that it will make standalone financials also less volatile over time. This change, similar to the previous accounting policy about ESOP trust, did not impact any of our consolidated numbers reported in our investor releases of yesterday evening. Thank you. And with this, I will pass over back to Diwakar.
Thank you, Rohitash. We'll now move on to the question and answer session. Anyone who has a question may press the raise hand button. I will then open up their lines and there'll be an opportunity to ask questions. When you ask a question, just state the organization that you represent. If you represent the organization, it just helps us doing transcription efforts. The first question comes from the line of Hitesh Arora. Hitesh, I've unmuted you. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks. This is Hitesh from Unifi Capital. I just wanted to understand which of the three businesses have been the growth drivers. If you could, delve a little more deep whether you coming from digital, whether it's coming from financial services, if you your operations, what are the growth drivers of the revenue, please?
Yeah, hi Hitesh. I think we've had a fairly supportive demand environment across the three businesses over the last 4 quarters. I think while growth leadership rotates across businesses from quarter to quarter, but over a 3-4 quarter view, we've had good traction on all the three businesses. More specifically, I think in the recent past, we've had some good wins both in our customer operations business and in the markets business. If I look back a couple of quarters ago, then we had some reasonable sized wins on the digital business as well. So in that sense, I think growth has been fairly broad-based.
Okay. And any commentary you can give on the outlook going forward, which is and just on taking a step back on the market sides, when you say you growth, whether it's what is it? Is it acquiring new customers or is it acquiring new business lines?
So I'll take the first part of the question and I'll request Anjan to respond to the second part on markets growth. In terms of outlook, I think we continue to see a supportive environment. Obviously, the last, if you look back to the last 3-4 quarters, most of them have been very, very strong. I'm not sure that same degree of strength will get sustained in the future, but on the whole, we see a fairly supportive environment. As Rohitash also mentioned, fortunately, we haven't been on the receiving end of any very large roll-offs in the recent past. And even as we sit today, we don't see any on the horizon. So in that sense, whatever new sales we make should help contribute towards net growth outcomes in the next couple of quarters. So at least in the short to medium term, I think demand is supportive. With that, I'll hand over to Anjan to address the question on market.
Yeah, I think, again, growth has been pretty broad-based. We've been able to add new clients, and we've seen growth of existing clients. I think the axis of growth has been twofold. One is along the product lines that we've invested in, and secondly, in sort of growth in what I would call more of our onshore consulting business, which gets us closer to business and to customers.
Sorry if I didn't understand fully. In financial services, if you've grown, is it because of you acquiring more clients, or is it being more sort of business lines of work being offshore?
Sorry. Yeah, maybe I wasn't very clear when I spoke. This isn't a very clear connection. What I mentioned was that we saw broad-based growth. So we were acquiring new customers and we saw growth from existing clients. And so it's across both client sets. And in terms of services, we saw growth across the product lines that we've picked, which in our business is effectively capital markets operations and client lifecycle services, and also in onshore consulting. So we saw a lot more growth in our onshore businesses and in consulting in general.
Okay, understood. Thanks. I'll come back in the queue. Thanks.
Thank you, Resham. The next question comes from the line of Sandeep Shah. Sandeep, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity and congrats on good execution. Just wanted to understand the comments about the roll-offs. So are we trying to say the roll-off what we have witnessed starting from FY22, as of now, there is no change in that and the roll-off continues to remain lower versus the earlier years? And can it continue at least in the short to medium term? And what can change if roll-off has to increase?
So Sandeep, I will take that. So our comment was that we haven't seen since start of FY21 or so any large unexpected roll-offs, and that positive situation is also persisting at this time. And that's what PD also mentioned, that in near term on the horizon there is nothing of that sort. Having said that, there is natural roll-off which is either planned or in some cases because of short-term nature of the work. Those roll-offs keep happening. They were happening earlier also prior to FY21, and they even happen today. And that's pretty natural and well planned for. What we are talking about is any large expected discontinuation of a client, contract. That kind of situation we have not seen, thankfully.
Okay. And Rohitash, we generally share the annual new business addition and the annual roll-off. So can you update those figures? Because now, including personnel, it would help us in terms of modeling.
Do you want to take that?
Yeah, Sandeep, I don't know that we've shared specific numbers, but I do think what we've shared is sort of broad quantum. So if I look back over the last 3-4 years, we've been averaging somewhere between $40 and $50 million a year in terms of new sales, annualized values of new sales. I think, certainly in FY21 and in FY22 till date, numbers have been higher than that, which is obviously reflective in the growth numbers that you see. Roll-offs, as Rohitash said, you can decompose into two parts. One is sort of the run rate roll-offs that happen in the business. I would say in the very old days, that number would be somewhere between 15 and 20% of the book, give or take. It's probably a little higher now because there's a slightly larger proportion of consulting and short-term work that's there in our book. But again, to Rohitash's point, that's, sort of pretty well planned for. And I think, we have enough ability to absorb that and offset that against new sales that are making. What really hurts is when you have large, chunky, unexpected roll-offs from specific client situations. And we experienced a couple of those, or 3 of those between 2016 and 2019, which basically wiped out all the effect of the other sales that were happening over that period. So fortunately, we haven't been a victim of that in the last 18 months or
so. Okay. And this new business addition is including personnel, or that would be over and above that?
That's right, yeah.
Okay. Can I please ask another question on margins? Rohitash, just if you give us some color about when the situation goes normal on the pandemic, how the cost line within direct cost, SG&A will look like. Will it sustain at current levels or there would be an increase? So generally give a band of 28-32% in terms of the EBITDA margin comfort. So will that band change once the travel restrictions are totally removed, maybe after 6 to 9 months?
Yes, Sandeep. So situation is still fluid as to what new normal will be, especially in the industry where a lot of people are new hires and they have been hired to work remotely, and at some point some of them may have to come to office. So there will be some one-off cost that may happen. That's point number one. And on sustained basis, I think travel costs will most likely not go back to its prior level. So I think out of the total travel and G&A kind of savings that we saw of about 250 bips through this pandemic, at least half of that we should be able to retain, even in the fully normal scenario. But there will be one-off costs. There might be one-off costs when we try to return to office in the near future. Sorry, was there a second part to your question?
Yeah, just on the EBITDA margin range, which you generally give at 28-32%. So looks like right now you are at the higher end of that comfort range. Will it change in the immediate term?
No, in the near future, I think, our visibility is as good as yours. So as I just mentioned, we are continuing to work from home for 85% plus of our staff. The number may, for work to office may nudge slightly upwards through the rest of the year, but it's not likely to, go to a very substantial proportion in next few months. So given that, I think near-term margin comfort at current level is definitely there. But I want to point out a longer-term, picture also, which is on the employee cost side, right? Because G&A and travel ultimately they are a smaller proportion, and how the supply side situation, which currently is tight for some of the skills, especially in the digital and tech area, how that pans out will also will have some bearing on the employee cost side of things, which may kind of have an impact on EBITDA. That's why I think the range is correct. Just that due to various benefits that I talked about, we are currently at the upper end of it.
Okay, thanks. I have one more will come and follow. Thanks.
Thank you.
The next question comes from the line of Dipesh Mehta. Dipesh, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of questions. First, about the managed services. If I look at our managed services growth rate, it seems to be flattening out kind of thing compared to overall growth trajectory. So if you can provide some sense about whether it is largely because of personnel-related growth trajectories or anything else playing out there. Second question is about work from home. I think partly you answered earlier. Still, we have sizable portion is working from home rather than office. So how one should look return back to office? Any plan which we have, let's say, in next few quarters? If you can provide some sense about return back to office.
Sorry, PD, you want to take the question?
So I'll take the second question, and you about return to office. You can talk about the managed services percentage.
Yeah.
Return to office, as Rohitash mentioned, we don't anticipate a very aggressive return to office plan for a couple of different reasons. As Rohitash mentioned, only about 50% of our staff is double vaccinated as we speak right now. We expect that number will nudge up to 85-90% over the next few weeks and certainly by the end of the quarter. Secondly, clients I think are not really pushing for an aggressive return to office plan because they want to be very cautious and risk averse and not take the chance that there could again be a discontinuity in services because of an outbreak either in our office or more generally in the community. So for all of those reasons, we think that return to office is going to be fairly calibrated and measured over the next few months. Today, we're about 13-14% of the staff working from the offices, and we don't expect that number to increase substantially this calendar year. Hopefully, if the COVID situation stays subdued, then coming Q4, we might see that number starting to pick up more meaningfully. Rohitash, over to you.
And Dipesh, on the managed services side, I think you partly answered it already, that primarily because of addition of Personiv, which is largely on FTE model across their entire book, that led to a step down in our managed services metric post-integration. On the probability of the number going up from here, I would like to say that most of our, or rather half of our new sales, we try to pitch in managed services mode. And so basically there is some traction there as to why this number can potentially go up in near future. And second point is that, some of these managed services new deals, they tend to be chunkier. So there might be, some impact of that in few months if we end up winning those. And thirdly, we have seen some of our growth, like I was mentioning, in our top 10 client, majority of them have grown very strongly year over year also. And most of these large clients, are legacy clients, and their pricing is typically on the FTE basis. So when the growth happened in those client bases, that tend to kind of depress managed services number as opposed to growing it. Thank you.
And last question, if I can squeeze, just about the last, let's say 6 to 7 quarters, we have reported very healthy growth recovery. It is largely, in your opinion, driven by broad-based demand, or it is market share gain also played out to large extent? If you can just bifurcate overall demand recovery versus market share shift. Thanks.
PD, and then you want to take that? I did not hear it clearly.
Even I didn't understand. Dipesh, you said, is it because of demand recovery or what was the other factor?
Market share shift, whether we gain market share, which is explaining our strong recoveries.
Okay, Anjan, do you want to take that? I guess the question is growth. That's been there in the last 6 quarters. Is it just a broad uptrend in the market, or have we been picking up share from other players?
Okay, thank you. I think it's a continuation of the trend that we discussed on our call 3 months ago, where broadly we've seen an increased demand from our clients for 2 or 3 reasons. One is more comfort of virtual working. So we found a whole new set of customers that may not have considered offshoring, starting to consider offshoring. Secondly, we've seen a slowdown in captive deployments because possibly their model of deployment needs much more overseas travel, which has obviously been on hold. I think those two thematics have been the big drivers of growth, and we've seen that continue. The third interesting thing is we've started seeing a little bit of demand coming in even from the captive organizations or the India organizations themselves, where we're providing consulting services to them. So I'd say that it's more of what we saw last quarter. It's hard to gauge whether we're winning market share. We continue to win against some of the larger competitors in areas of our strength, in areas of product capability, but I would say that that's no different than it has been in the past.
Thank you.
Dipesh, any other questions?
No, thanks.
If participants have any other questions, you may please press the raise hand button. We have a follow-on question from the line of Sandeep Shah. Sandeep, please go ahead. I know. I lost Sandeep. Anyway, I'll allow Debashish Mazumdar to talk now. Debashish, please go ahead.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
Yeah. Good evening to the management team, and wish you all a very happy Diwali. Sir, my question is, what I am hearing from you, there is a lot of talks and discussion around consulting-led wins and deals. So, do you think that this consulting-led approach or the winning that we are getting today, that will help us to get more outsourcing opportunities or more offshoring opportunities going forward? Or it is like one-time consulting deals that we are winning and it has no follow-up going forward?
So, again, I would say that this is a continuation of a strategy that we embarked on a couple of years back, when, if some of you who were on the conference call back then, you will remember that we said that, look, we're going to do two things. One is we're going to invest in onshore deployment, and the second thing we invest is in onshore delivery capabilities, because our view was that our clients wanted more hybrid onshore-offshore delivery capability, and they wanted that delivery capability focused in specific areas in which we had what I would call resonant skills. So I think we've invested in those areas, and I feel that some of the wins that we're now seeing are a payoff on that bet. So we do think that this onshore growth and the consulting growth will ultimately transfer towards more offshore growth, and we've seen that because in the last 2 quarters, as clients have become more comfortable with offshoring, we're seeing many more of these deals where they're a combination of onshore and offshore, or onshore is helping us get a seat at the table, which is then driving offshore discussions. So I think it is very much linked.
Great. One follow-up to that, sir. When we say that we are winning some of the deals from Indian captives also, do you think that we are living in a world where captive will not be a competition for us? It will be actually incremental opportunity for us?
I think it's too early to say that, because I think broadly, we expect India is a very popular destination, certainly for newcomers. So we expect that many more companies will set up captive organizations, and they'll continue to be competitors to the third-party vendor landscape. So I don't think that's changed. I think if you want to win things away from captives, you have to show a clearly differentiated capability and a clearly differentiated delivery model, which is hard for the captives to match. So I think in those areas, and I think actually some of our areas of managed service fit in that area. If you have those areas, then I think you can win. Yes. So there is more appetite in those areas, but in those areas only.
Okay. And one last question is, when you, as you rightly said, that you are investing in the consultancy-led approach and onshore capabilities, which is definitely going to follow up as more offshore opportunities going forward. So in a longer period of time, I'm not asking for next 2 to 3 quarters. Structurally, when this offshore opportunities will come to us, do we see a incremental margin scenario for us, or it's like that even if we are getting into more offshore, our margins are not going to improve further? I'm not asking for next 2 to 3 quarters. I'm asking for long-term structural.
Piri, do you want to take up? Do you want to take up, Piri?
Hello?
Yeah, sorry. So is the question that will margins improve because of more offshoring? Is that
Yes. So, sir, what I'm trying to understand is right now and for last 2 to 3 years, it's very clear that we have invested in consultancy and onshoring capabilities, which is expected to translate into more offshore revenues going forward. And do you think because of this offshore shifting in our business, our margin structurally is expected to go up in the longer term?
So I'll break up my answer into 2-3 parts. One, it is undoubtedly true that offshore work is more margin rich than onshore work. So if our overall mix of revenues was to move more towards offshore, that would be a tailwind for margins. Having said that, I think we disclosed this number in our earnings deck. So if you look back 4 quarters ago, onshore work was 23%. Last quarter, it was down to 20%.
Yes.
Which has helped a little bit in terms of margins. But I don't know whether, we have line of sight to that number secularly becoming lower in the quarters ahead. So I would say, even if we can keep it at the current mix of give or take 20-80, it's not a bad outcome at all. And therefore, the margin range that Rohita shared, the 28 to 32% range, is, I think, appropriate.
Okay. Thank you very much for answering my question, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, Debashish. We'll take the next question from the line of Shraddha Agarwal. Shraddha, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Thanks to the management team for taking my question and congrats on a good quarter. So, PD, would it be possible for you to break down the revenue from Personiv this quarter?
Yeah, so I think, Shraddha, Personiv, as we've disclosed at the time of the acquisition, was about in the vicinity of $30 million revenue run rate. Mm-hmm. And given it's been a fairly short period of time since that, it's not really changed very materially. So, that should give you a good sense of where it is. Most of the growth that has happened, is obviously on the native business.
Right. And any joint go-to-market deals that you would want to talk about in the sense that, have you been able to break into new accounts or get incremental wallet share from the existing top accounts of Personiv?
Yeah, I think that's a good story. And thank you for asking that question. I think we touched on this briefly perhaps in the last call, but there's been progress even since then. So if I look at, where we stand today, there are 3 opportunities that we pitched in conjunction with the Personiv team that we won. 1 in our markets business, 2 in our digital business. There is a 4th opportunity, which they pitched, using some of our technology expertise, which they won a mandate for. So I would say there are at least 4 different opportunities where the combined teams have won a mandate from clients. And given that it's been only 9 months since that deal was closed, I think, that's a pretty positive outcome.
Right. And since you said that, in the recent quarters, operations and markets are the 2 verticals that have been kind of driving, more growth for us compared to digital. So financial services, Anjan briefly touched upon. So, but what is driving growth in operations for us? Any specific client related ramp-ups, or is it again, broad-based growth out there? And what service line particularly in operations that is driving growth for us?
Anjan?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things. So during the pandemic, because of the way India held up, there's been some geographic transfers. So at one large client, for example, there was work that was being done in the Philippines that's been moved to India, and being a partner of choice, I think we've benefited from that. That's in the customer care space. Given cost pressures and labor pressures in the US market, there's been a move of that same customer plus another one moving more customer care work to India. So that's been the second driver of growth. And I think the third driver of growth has been because of the same labor shortages and difficulty of running functions in the United States for some of our customers who don't want to offshore. We've seen tremendous growth in our Fayetteville site. So we've taken one client fully on board into the Fayetteville site. So that's ramped quite rapidly. So we've seen sort of three levels. And then, there's little bits of automation and analytics that we continue to gain traction in. But I would say that those are the big three drivers, big drivers of demand.
Right. And just last question, if I may. I mean, PD, our last 4-5 quarters have been very good for us, barring probably 1Q, wherein growth was a bit tepid. But as we go into second half, how do we see the sustenance of growth rates, given that probably, Q3 might also have some challenges because of furloughs and holidays. But do we see that impacting our revenue growth traction, or we see probably confident of sustenance of growth rates in second half as well?
Shraddha, I think furloughs are not really a material factor in our business as much as it might be for the traditional IT business. So we don't have that, fixed seasonality. It's more a function of, specific events that happen that drive the outcomes of a given quarter. You're absolutely right. I think the majority of our prior 3-4 quarters have been very strong, 5% plus sequential growth rate quarters. Look, I have no way of saying what Q3 and Q4 will hold beyond the fact that generally speaking, demand is supportive. And I think if large roll-offs continue to stay subdued, then we have a good shot of ending the year also on a strong note.
Right, that's helpful. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shraddha. The next question comes from the line of VP Rajesh. VP, go ahead.
Hi, congratulations on a very good set of numbers. PD, just wanted to clarify, when you say the growth has been higher, or I guess what you said, if I interpreted correctly, that your growth in the native business has been higher than the Personate business, right? Is that the takeaway?
Yeah, certainly in the last couple of quarters, that's accurate.
Okay. And then second question is, given the cash that is building up again on the books, in spite of the buyback, are you guys back in the M&A market to see other companies that you could acquire, like Personate or others?
The answer is yes, but I would sort of say if you take a look back between 2012 and now, we've closed 4 deals, including sort of the smaller deal with 2-4 and 3 other slightly larger deals. So that's, if you do the math, it's an average 1 deal every 2 to 3 years. And I think that's, it's fairly reflective of the challenges in ultimately closing a transaction, because so many stars have to align in terms of finding the right asset, cultural fit between the teams, financial metrics being right, us feeling that 2 plus 2 can hopefully make 5. So many things have to align, right? So it's not a very high yield process, but we are absolutely continuing to look at potential opportunities. And if we find the right one, you're right, our balance sheet and the fact that we have no leverage certainly allows us the financial flexibility to pursue it.
Okay. And lastly, you talked about the growth in the financials, capital markets side, and the operations side. What about the third core segment? If you can comment on that, what trends are you seeing there?
I think we are also seeing strong trends on the digital business. My comments on our markets and customer ops business were more with reference to the immediately preceding period. But if you take a 12-month view, I think all 3 businesses have grown very substantially over that period. So growth leadership rotates amongst our businesses, quarter on quarter, depending on who closes more deals in any given 3-month period. But broadly speaking, I think, the demand situation is supportive across all the 3.
Okay. All right. That's all I had. Thank you very much and wish you all a very happy Diwali.
Thank you and the same to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, VP. We have a follow-on from the line of Sandeep Shah.
Hi, thanks. Just the follow-up, how to read the recruitment numbers, because that has been really robust in the Q1 as well as Q2. So is it to face the attrition challenges and the high utilization, or also in anticipation of a strong growth outlook which we foresee going forward?
Yeah, so Sandeep, I think this question was asked also with our prior quarter results, and I think the answer hasn't changed, that it's actually a mix of both those factors. So certainly, as you would have seen in our attrition numbers, attrition is elevated both for us and for the industry. We were at a 40% plus level in the prior period. So we feel that it is prudent to somewhat beef up our benches in selective areas, to compensate for those attrition levels. So there is some of that. But there is also the fact that we see, a good demand pipeline, market for talent is stretched. So we feel again it is prudent to invest in certain areas where we think the odds are good that, we'll be able to bill out those resources sooner rather than later. So it's a combination of both of those factors, Sandeep.
Okay. And PD, if you look at this year on an organic basis, the growth can touch close to 20 or upwards of 20% in dollar terms. So assuming no major pandemic-related pressure or no major macro-related pressure, directionally, you believe even beyond FY22, we could be in a healthy growth scenario? I'm not asking a guidance, but directionally, you believe at least a good healthy growth scenario can be built versus what we have seen in FY16 to FY21?
Yeah, so Sandeep, like we've tried to explain a few times that between between 2016 and 2019, we were basically flat in revenues. But if you decompose that trend, two things were happening. We still maintained a fairly good momentum on gross sales, new sales that we were making to clients, which was very encouraging internally for us as a management team, because it's an indication that the services we are bringing to market are relevant for clients. Unfortunately, we were not getting the financial benefit of those new sales because that was compensated by the 3 or 4 large roll-off events that happened over that 3-4 year period. So what's happened since then is that gross sales have accelerated a little bit, but more importantly, those roll-offs, have not rematerialized, and therefore the net growth numbers have been very strong. So to answer your question, with that backdrop, I think if we are able to avoid those large roll-offs in FY23 and beyond, then I would feel optimistic that, our growth sales will allow us to post, decent growth numbers. Obviously, I think FY22 is a little bit of an outlier. If you're indeed able to get to a 20% plus type number, that's not something that, I would say will get repeated very often. But we can certainly have, respectable growth outcomes, even in FY23 and beyond, if the large roll-offs stay away.
This is helpful, PD. This last thing, Rohitash, you in the opening remarks said there is an accounting change. I just missed the details. So can you repeat the same? What is it? It relates to ESOP accounting, I think.
Yeah, Sandeep. So we have, like many companies, we have also set up ESOP trust for the benefit of employees, basically ones who get granted employee stock options in senior management. And prior to this quarter, that trust was getting, accounted in a different manner, which created at a standalone level testing of impairment of the loan that eClerx was giving to the trust. Now we have merged both the entities meaning the trust as well as the eClerx India parent entity to which trust is attached as a single consolidated entity. So from now on, that volatility that was happening at standalone eClerx India level will not be seen in future. But again, at console level, neither the prior accounting nor the current changed accounting had any difference whatsoever.
Yeah, and Sandeep, if I can just add to Rohitash's point, the trust was already getting consolidated in the consolidated financials. So that was happening for the last 4 or 5 years. The change that Rohitash is outlining is that we have now chosen to consolidate it at the standalone level as well, because ultimately the trust is buying shares of the standalone parent company, and under this accounting treatment, those shares get treated as treasury shares effectively and offset against the equity capital of the standalone company. So we feel that that is a more appropriate way of accounting for it, since the trust in effect is an extension of the standalone company.
No, it's clear. Thanks and all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If there are any questions, participants may please press the raise hand button. We have a follow-on from the line of Devashish Mazumdar.
Yeah. Thank you for taking my question again. Some of your IT services peers have mentioned in their call that because of the lack of talent availability at their end, clients are more shifting towards outsourcing and offshoring. Do you think that we are also seeing the same kind of scenario in our business, and how sustainable is that if we are seeing that today?
Anjan, over to you.
Yeah, I think we mentioned that as one of the main reasons for seeing demand, which is sort of local market hiring, shortages in skills in our client markets. It's actually been a big driver overall to why our clients are in general looking to do more offshore. So I think that's definitely affecting us also. How long it'll last is a question that maybe we should pose to economists and the Federal Reserve, because ultimately it's, the US continues to be our largest market, and then followed by sort of the developed other Western markets. So to the extent that we expect minimum wages to move up, we expect outsourcing to be in demand for some time.
Great, sir. Thank you very much.
If anyone has a question, please press the raise hand button, please. We have a follow-on again from Sandeep.
Yeah, thanks, and sorry to ask again. Just a last question. Anjan, you were earlier mentioning that one of the reasons for the higher growth has been the talent scarcity in the on-site locations. So in a scenario, if that gets addresses, will you believe the growth opportunity may die down, or do you believe once the clients who tested the benefits of offshoring are unlikely to reverse that outsourcing and offshoring as a whole?
Yeah. So I think I'd give the same answer that I gave the previous gentleman, which is ultimately, look, we can't, unfortunately, we can't tell the future. So it's hard to know what happens next. All I can tell you is that at present, the sort of broad-based shortage of skills seems embedded, right? I mean, so we're discussing higher inflation in the US. They talk about inflation in the European markets, in addition to supply side shortages, labor shortages, in addition to wage hikes. So our expectation is that actually this demand is likely to continue. I think if there was anything that we would expect in the short to medium term is more supply side pressure for us in our service markets. So for example, wage pressures in places like India and places like the Philippines, I feel like is a closer second order effect than reduced demand in our buyer market for the medium term.
Okay, thanks and all the best.
Thank you. A last request: if in case anyone has a question, please press the raise hand button. Given that we don't have any more questions, I'll hand it back to PD for his closing remarks. PD.
Thank you everyone for taking the time and joining our call, and we look forward to speaking with you again with our Q3 results. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Bye.
Thank you.